Hello, my friends, and welcome to this episode of Tending with Tyler. It is wet. So the forecast for today, we are looking at 35 mils of rain, 50-kilometer-hour winds. It is going to rain all day, and then switch to freezing rain around midnight, followed by snow around 2 to 3 a.m. So we've got a mixed bag of precipitation, which is perfect. So I'm super excited to test out a new tent. I'm always on the hunt for budget gear, and I found another tent off Amazon. This guy was $62, and unlike the last tent in the last episode, I've got a great feeling about this one. I think it is going to be a great find. So what a better way to test it out in the pouring rain. So without further ado, I'm gonna slat a tarp up first just to have a bit of shelter. That way, if it doesn't ease up, I can set the tent up under the tarp, pick it up and move it over, just so we know that no water's getting in during setup. And before I go to bed tonight, I can check to make sure it's dry inside, which I have a feeling it will be, and we're good to go for the night. Anyway, gonna set up a tarp real quick, and yeah, looking forward to this wet fun adventure. Oh man, that's wet and quite cold. You gotta love springtime for that. I'm gonna have to keep wiping off the camera, so I apologize guys if you keep getting water spots, but this kind of rain, it's almost impossible to keep that lens dry. Anyways, that'll do for now. I can see this tarp is already leaking. I might have to adjust it. I've never tested this tarp out. It is a canvas that I use for the floor of my hot tent. But yeah, it's leaking. I can see the weave isn't super tight. I can see daylight through. But live and learn. You gotta test out your gear at some point, right? Anyways, yeah, let's get that tent set up so we can see how waterproof it is. I'd like to have it out all day in the rain. It's currently 10 a.m. So by the time I'm ready for bed around 8 p.m. tonight, we'll know if it's gonna leak or not. This is not supposed to let up at all. So anyway, I'm gonna pull it out. And yeah, I also have this new pack that I'm gonna talk to you guys about a little later. I like it so much that I may do a separate video just on the pack. It is a Nature Hike Rock 65-liter pack. Super inexpensive, but we'll get to that later. Right guys, so this is the Algory, I think, two-person backpacking tent. So as far as pack dimensions go, you are 16 inches long and you're 5 inches wide. So the form factor of this is actually not too shabby. Made in China, but as I said, price tag on this guy, $62.99. It also weighs 4.6 pounds, which isn't light, but it is not super heavy. So this is going to be a great starting tent for someone wanting to get out into backpacking but you don't want to spend a ton of money. If this doesn't leak, this is a heck of a buy. I'm gonna try and slap it up real quick under this leaky tarp. Then we can carry it over into the rain and we'll see how it does. Guys, no matter what I do, this tent's getting wet on the inside. I'm definitely gonna have to take a shirt and dry it out once I get the fly on. There you have it, guys. The Algory 2-person backpacking tent. I've got you tucked under a tree, hopefully trying to keep that lens dry. So far, it looks solid. Stitching looks fantastic. It's got tape seams. It is pulled out nice and tight. The water is just beating right off this thing. I have a good feeling about this tent, guys. I'll take you inside for a look a little bit later. I am absolutely drenched. I have to get under there, try and start a bit of a fire and maybe dry off a bit before I take you guys inside this tent. Maybe have a coffee to warm up. I am getting cold. As far as dimensions go, you're looking at 50 inches wide on the inside, 82 inches long, and you've got a peak height of 40 inches. So this is actually quite a roomy tent. Now it will be a little bit tight with two, but you should be able to fit 2 full-size sleeping pads in there, no problem. Use the vestibule for your gear. Anyways, let's try and get a fire going, set up a chair, try and dry off and warm up a little bit. I'll bring you guys back in a few minutes. Finally, talk about a struggle. Lord, to make sure I nurse this fire. The stuff is pretty wet on the outside, but not bad on the inside. So it's just a matter of trying to get some of this soaking wet bark off before you feed it into the flames. And then once we get a decent bed of coals, we should be home free. Oh. Whew. Now that's still hot, but my hands are so cold I barely feel it. Well guys, it is now 4 p.m. The rain has tapered off. It's supposed to go away until about 7 p.m. so we have a bit of a window here. Now, I'm gonna pop this tent open and see if it's been leaking. You know, we've had a good 4 hours of solid, fairly heavy rain now. I've just been sitting by this fire, feeding it, drinking coffee, just relaxing. I've got a good feeling. Watching the way the water beads off this fly, I'm gonna guess that it is completely waterproof. There might be a bit of water in there from when I set it up because it is so damp right now that even under cover, I am not drying off that much. So there could be a bit, but we'll go take a look and hope for the best. I think it's gonna be okay. Well guys, as you can see, that tent is waterproof. There's a bit of moisture on the floor. That is from when I set up, 100%. It is so damp out here. I'm still wet, even though I've been under this tarp for a long time by this fire now. Nothing is drying. So the bit of moisture that's on the floor in that tent, I can 100% guarantee is from when we set up in the pouring rain. I inspected all the mesh. There is not a single wet spot on any of that mesh. As you can see from that shot, there is great ventilation in that tent. It is 90% mesh with a bathtub floor. So ventilation, moisture buildup, condensation is not going to be much of a problem in that tent. Some thunder off in the distance there. So I would say this is a win. We will give the final thoughts tomorrow morning after sleeping in it, but there you have it, a $62 backpacking tent that is waterproof. Never thought I'd see the day. Oh. Oh. Oh, feels good to have something hot for sure. And just to balance that out, I wouldn't want to warm up too much, so I think it's time for a drink. Cheers, everyone. Cheers to inexpensive tents that are surprisingly good quality. I am so impressed with that tent. I have had premium tents that I have paid $600 for that have not handled that amount of rain as well as this tent has. Just goes to show you, sometimes money isn't everything. You can own gear, good gear, that is not super expensive. And just the same as that tent, this pack that I am using right now, it is the Nature Hike. I like it better than my Osprey, which is a premium pack. It is a very expensive pack. I find this Nature Hike more comfortable, but we're gonna drink this beer, eat this soup, and I'll get into that afterwards because I love that pack, guys. I love it. Huh. Oh yeah. Well guys, finished up that soup. I'm just trying to warm my bones up a bit now before we hop into that tent for the night, because that's coming soon. I am cold as heck. I just wanted to give you my thoughts on this new pack that I purchased. Now, This is a Nature Hike backpack. I believe it's the Rock 60-liter pack. This has been reviewed by many channels, many big names, and most of them have hated this backpack. Absolutely hated it. Now, I find that incredibly surprising because, to be honest with you guys, this is actually probably my favorite pack to date that I have owned. So I have got, you know, the Osprey, I've got a Kelty, I've got packs that are worth $500 to $600. And this $100 backpack, that's right, $100, carries better than my $500 Osprey AG. It is super comfortable. It just handles the weight. It's just awesome. I honestly can't figure out why there is so much hate against this pack. Now, we are all entitled to our own personal preferences, but I find it so hard to believe that people hate this pack. Now, perhaps they had an older model and I have a new and updated model, because some of the complaints these other channels had about this pack I find completely null and void. Now, the pack itself only weighs 2.5 pounds. Now, that is light. That is really light for a 60 plus 5 liter pack. When I say plus 5 liter, it's because it's got this massive kangaroo pouch, on the front that you can store an additional 5 liters worth of gear. It's got 2 very large, generous side pockets, compression straps on the side. It's got compression straps for hiking poles. It is indeed a roll top, which is water resistant, they say. And I've had this out in the rain today and there has not been any water in here. But as you can see, it is a generous size roll top pack. All one compartment, so there's not a whole lot of organization in this pack, but that seems to be the way people are going. And that's fine. But yeah, this thing is really impressive. The main thing most people had said on their channel is the spacing between the shoulder straps was too close together, and that this chafed your shoulders was a big complaint. Now, maybe it's because I'm such a small guy. You know, I'm an average size male, 5'8", not super strong, but no, I'm not tiny. This sits perfectly on my shoulders. So maybe if you are a very muscular person and you have massive traps, they would rub, but I find this sits perfectly. You know, it's got sternum straps, it's got load lifters, it's got a pouch for your cell phone in the front here. You would be able to fit like a common 500 milliliter water bottle in here, but for the cell phone, it's perfectly fine. 2 side hip pockets. You know, you keep a Cliff Bar. I've got charging cables in there, so I know where they are. But this is my first outing with this pack, and I love it, guys. I love it. I can't wait for my big trip in the summer, going on a 7-night hike. I'm gonna bring this pack. The main thing is, when you are heavily loaded, you know, with 33 pounds in this pack, and I'm walking, it doesn't feel like a stiff board strapped to my back. So when my hips move up and down, the pack itself will flex to the left and right and not be so tight that I can feel the load shifting. The load is shifting on the hip belt and not on your back. It is super nice. I love this thing. But let's not get too far ahead of myself. This is only the first trip out. Just my initial impressions. I will give a full review probably later on in this season after I've used it a whole bunch. But for now, first impressions are fantastic. I would recommend this pack even without testing it all summer. It is $100. You are getting a ton of pack for $100. Nature Hike has come such a long way I am really looking forward to what they come out with next, because their gear is starting to become just top notch, but not with top notch pricing. $100. $100, and I like this better than my $500 pack. Anyways, that's what we're at now. I'm gonna stoke that sad fire, finish that beer, and I'll bring you guys into the tent with me, because I need to warm up. I need to get in the sleeping bag. I'm damp and cold. Oh, well, it's a little bit small for two. Now, if it's your spouse that you're staying with, no problem, but you'll be a bit snuggly. Luckily, because this is all mesh, if you're going to be leaning against the side of this, there's a lot of space between this mesh and the fly, so you're not going to get wet. The ventilation is going to be excellent in this tent, and it is still not showing any signs of any water droplets. Just a bit of moisture on the floor here and there from when I set up in the rain, like I said, but it is quite impressive. For $63, this tent is insane, to be honest. The fact that it doesn't leak is impressive as heck. Now, to touch base on the waterproofness of this tent. So this has a hydrostatic head rating of 3,000. Now, last episode, I had talked a bit about hydrostatic head rating, and some of you messaged me a little confused, so I'm going to clarify. Now, when I say hydrostatic head rating of 3,000 millimeters, that doesn't mean that it can withstand 3,000 millimeters of rain before it soaks through. If that was the case, we'd need a boat to set this tent up in. That is a lot of rain. So what they do in testing these tents, and there are some variations to how they test, but for the most part, the standard test is to take a piece of the tent fly and place it underneath a cylinder tube. So the cylinder tube goes on top of the fly material, and they start adding water in the top of the tube. And the fabric of the tent holds back the water from the tube coming through. So the more water you can put in the tube before it leaks determines how you get your number. So 3,000 millimeters is 3 meters. So they fill this tube up with 3 meters of water, and then after 3 meters, it starts to leak. So you get the number 3,000. So 3,000 is quite waterproof, as you can see. But interestingly enough, different regions have a different recommended hydrostatic head rating for their tents. So for instance, Canada and the US, for the most part, we have a recommended 2,000 millimeter. Now, if you go up to Norway, that Denmark area, they have a minimum of 3,000 because it's way more wet. So there are different numbers for different regions, which is really confusing. All you really need to know, the higher the number, the more waterproof. 3,000 is quite waterproof, and you should be fine with anything that's 3,000. But yeah, just a little fun fact. For the longest time, I honestly didn't understand until I did a whole lot of research on it, because it is quite confusing when you start talking about hydrostatic head ratings. Anyway, guys, it is starting to feel even better in here now that I've got the fly closed. I'm starting to warm up a bit. I'm going to climb into my sleeping bag and probably throw on a movie. It is just after 5:30 p.m., so it is still early, but I've had enough of being wet and cold. So now I'm just going to relax and listen to the rain when it picks back up. If anything else happens tonight, I'll be sure to bring you back if this leaks. But I think we're good. I think this tent is solid. It's going to be a nice, dry, warm, quiet night for me. So I'll either bring you back tonight if anything interesting happens, or I'll see you in the morning and we'll take a look at how this tent did for condensation and whatnot. Have a great night, guys. We'll see you later. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is about 7 and it rained quite a bit overnight. And by the looks of things, it is dry in here. Oh. So I would call this a complete success. I have it a $62 Amazon tent that is very, very good quality. I could definitely recommend this tent for a first timer or even for experienced people. You don't have to spend a fortune to get a good tent. I'm quite pleasantly surprised. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna get up and pack up and get on edit here. Thank you so much for watching. Hit the like and subscribe button. If you have any questions at all, feel free to post in the comments or shoot me an email. tendingwithtyler@gmail.com. Yeah, time to get home and get into some dry, warm clothes. See you later, guys.